The first thing is we have to remember traffickers are going to take their victims wherever they can to make money. They are counting on every single person, whether it's that convenience store worker, that truck driver, that transit operator, the stay-at-home mom, the grandma, whoever you are, they're counting on all of us to be ignorant of what this crime looks like or to not care or to be too afraid to get involved.
Hello and welcome to Shelf Confidence, a podcast brought to you by the Pennsylvania Food Merchants Association that focuses on the trends and innovations in the food and beverage industry. I'm your host, John Zimmerman, and today we're talking about human trafficking. This is a serious topic, but an important one for retailers, transportation professionals, convenience stores, fuel operators, and other frontline businesses that interact with the public every day. We'll talk about human trafficking can show up in everyday settings, the role transportation networks and major events play, and how training and awareness can help employees recognize warning signs and report concerns safely. Joining me today are Philadelphia City Councilmember Dr. Nina Ahmad, Marisa Balanda, Deputy Policy Director for PennDOT, and Laura Cyrus, Senior Director of Industry Training and Outreach at Truckers Against Trafficking. Welcome to the show, ladies. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. No, it's a really serious subject, especially with FIFA and everything going on in the world. So I'm glad we're having it. So I figured I'd just start right from the top and just do a little introduction to everyone. If you guys could just kind of go around and briefly introduce yourself and just kind of explain the work that you do and how it intersects with fighting human trafficking.
I am council member at large for the city of Philadelphia. My name is Nina Ahmad, and it means that I serve all 1.6 million Philadelphians. I don't have a specific district. I also happen to be the chair of Public Health and Human Services. And in that, I see the intersections of how human trafficking survivors, show up in our city and how we need to do much more to tamp this down and end human trafficking in Philadelphia. This is my first term. I've done a lot of work on issues about creating accommodations for people in Philadelphia, including those who are survivors of human trafficking, so that they are not discriminated at work once they have survived and come into our regular workforce. And so we are very clear. We passed that bill passed, and there's some other impactful legislation I'm working on that make the workplace a much more healthy and equitable workplace.
Thank you, John, for having me today. My name is Marisa Balanda. I'm with PennDOT. PennDOT was one of the first transportation agencies in the nation to train employees to recognize and report suspected human trafficking situations. As the owners and operators of vast transportation networks, state departments of transportation are in a unique position to recognize the signs of human trafficking and to promote awareness among the users of our transportation network and those who interact with the state DOT. We're proud to partner with both the Pennsylvania State Police and many other committed organizations and state agencies to raise awareness and provide training. Thank you.
Of course. And last but not least, Laura.
Yeah, hey, thanks so much for including us in the conversation today. My name is Laura Cyrus, Senior Director of Industry Training and Outreach at TAT, and we provide industry-specific awareness training for members of the trucking, bus, and energy industries, basically frontline workers in all of those industries, as well as our work with law enforcement and government agencies, but basically working to galvanize this mobile army of basically transportation professionals and others that can assist law enforcement in the recognition and the reporting of the crime of human trafficking in order to aid in the recovery of victims and the arrest of their perpetrators. So this free industry-specific training that we provide can be included as a part of new hire orientation, regular safety training, and what we're finding is that it is proving to provide actionable strategies leading to the discovery and disruption of human trafficking networks across North America. So we're very grateful to be part of this conversation today and appreciate the awareness of this topic for your listeners.
Human trafficking can feel like a really hidden issue. It's obviously a very nuanced subject, but it touches a lot of different things, including a lot of public stuff. So what do you wish more people understood about human trafficking?
For the first time, Philadelphia is engaged in a citywide campaign to bring awareness and prevention of human trafficking. I was able to secure $500,000 for this campaign, which is really being administered through the Office of Public Safety. There was an RFP put out. There are 3 entities who are have been engaged to do the work, and it really starts with dismantling this thought that human trafficking only happens that young people, young women from foreign lands are brought in, kidnapped, or they're, coerced to sell sex or labor, or there's a white van that pulls up and kidnaps you. Well, some of that happens, but in 2023, there was a report of federal cases, 670 victims, 93% of them were local, U.S. citizens or citizenship unknown, and 7% were foreign nationals. And, human trafficking can be labor trafficking or sex trafficking. And of the sex trafficking cases, only 3% of victims are identified as foreign nationals. So the bulk of the people are local. The bulk of the people is happening right under our noses. And I just was in a conversation earlier today with one of the people who are doing this campaign, that by and large, the largest number of people involved in human trafficking are within the ages of 10 and 19. That's deeply problematic, right?
Yeah.
So this is a problem hidden in plain sight. I'm sitting right now near 15th and Market in my office. That's where a lot of vulnerable children, particularly those who are in foster care, are targeted, groomed, and trafficked right under our noses, right here in the city of Philadelphia. So we have work to do. And it is a problem we need to bring into the open. Sunlight is the best disinfectant of all times. And we're going to continue beyond this year to keep working at it so we keep everybody safe.
Bleach and a flamethrower sounds like a good disinfectant on the subject as well. I'm all for it. But Marisa, if you would also chime in as well, I'd love to get your feedback on, like, especially from like a larger transportation network perspective on this. Like, what are some things that people need to understand?
The main thing that is often a misconception is that the crime of human trafficking requires transportation, and it does not require transportation. It's just that some perpetrators, as we would call them, the bad guys or the criminals here, exploit our transportation systems to expand upon the crime or facilitate the crime. But by definition, human trafficking does not require the movement of individuals. Rather, it's the exploitation of the person through force, fraud, or coercion for either, as the councilwoman said, commercial sex or labor. And often transportation networks just happen to be convenient to use and fast. So that's why PennDOT's in the game. But yes, we collaborate with so many, social services organizations and law enforcement to make sure it is a comprehensive approach.
I just echo what's already been said, and I think the biggest misconception, as Councilmember mentioned, is just that it doesn't happen here, or it can't happen to people in my community or in my area. And I think for parents especially, we've all, I think, have this idea in our minds of human trafficking being very dramatic, very Hollywood, very abduction and kidnapping sort of adjacent. And yes, it can happen that way. But for parents especially, thinking you need to keep your head on a swivel. You need to keep your kids safe at all times as best we can. But, the digital landscape is, I think, even more of an issue than physically, right, out in the world. And so these traffickers can woo, they can groom, they can recruit our children and adults as well. When we're sitting safely in our own homes, when our kids are on our own couches, locked in our homes at night, if that's the circumstance, and to think that, trafficking only happens in this kind of narrow way. The reality is, most victims do know their trafficker. And we have to be just as smart as these manipulative, these cunning criminals, right? So that we are able to stay ahead and help prevent this crime from even taking place. And then, of course, intervene if and when we ever suspect it.
John, can I jump in for a second?
Of course.
Add to what Laura said, that we actually did a hearing in City Council on online grooming that happens on these platforms, on these gaming platforms. And we had an amazing number of people come to testify, including young people. There was an organization who brought 3 young people. The organization is Level Up. And one of the young men, like he was probably 12 or 13, and he was talking about a few years ago that he was about to give his home address to somebody he was talking online with, and his older brother just happened to walk in and said, who are you talking? Who are you giving that? Who are you talking to? And they said, oh, he's my friend. We've been playing together, and I was just going to give him my address. And
Yeah.
he was stopped in the nick of time. But there have been a recent case where a young woman was not so lucky to have someone intervene. She actually gave somebody her address. They met up. They went from a gaming platform to another site, and they got to know each other further. And then he groomed her into having her give her address. He came over and raped her.
Mm.
So
Mm.
these are real instances. As Laura said, just thinking we're all safe sitting in our homes, we're not. We are, and that doesn't mean we have to live in fear all the time, but I think having young children learn from very young age how to be in charge of their destiny in ways of knowing their bodies, of where they're knowing what information is theirs to keep and not to share. Those things needs to happen in preschools and middle schools, kindergarten and middle schools. That means that awareness piece comes in to have our educational system be aware, because they use tablets and laptops all day long. So there are ways for when a child is sitting in front thinking they're listening to a teacher, they're somewhere else roaming on some place else, unless it's a regulated device. So we just have to bring a lot more awareness to this issue.
Obviously, caregivers play a role in this, families play a role in this. What do they need to know in order to better protect the children in their lives from this thing? Because as we've mentioned several times here, is like a lot of these people know they're traffickers.
I don't think there are enough protections or device control, or I mean you think it's all tamped down and safe, and then you find out there's some other way to chat, or there's some other method that adults could be interacting with kids. And we know, I think council member, that's so insightful, just around helping children especially understand like who is safe, what is safe. When you feel something weird, it doesn't mean the person is necessarily a criminal, but that's something to develop within, right? Your child or yourself, to just really listen into, hey, something about this made me feel weird. Well, let's talk about that. Why did it make you, and so yeah, just really starting to understand that parents and caregivers have such an incredible role to play. As we know, anybody who is a parent, I mean, you lose sleep all the time over all kinds of different things. This is a very scary topic, but just speaking from Tat's perspective, and I know there are so many amazing resources out there for parents, but learn how to talk to your kids about porn, about human trafficking, about online safety. There are so many organizations that are providing fantastic resources for how to, yes, lock down devices and understand the reality of the social landscape that our kids are finding themselves in. So
I know Laura talked about it. And with this campaign underway, right now, I'll just give some stats. Just got it from one of the people who are doing this work. So in Philadelphia, with this effort, there are multiple efforts going on, by the way. With this particular effort, there are 12 organizations who have received access to pre-recorded training, so they can do it at their own time. 7 virtual training sessions have been scheduled or completed, meaning there's someone to answer questions in real time as you are doing this. There have been in-person trainings, a few of them, but with very much frontline workers, like particularly in EMTs and in our police. And those have been conducted. And overall, there's been over 2,800 have participated in some sort of training. This is all new people coming to the forefront who are in the city of Philadelphia. And this campaign actually has been introduced to the visitor center. We have volunteers who are called Fembassadors. And these Fembassadors, there's a network of them, and they have been made aware and resources made available to over 10,000 Fembassadors working citywide events. So your ears and eyes are going up right now as we speak. And I think we have to just keep it up and make sure, along with bringing awareness to our own families with our own children. The warning thing is there's people who traffic their own kith and kin. Just let's be real about this.
Sure.
So this is a very touchy subject, but just recently we had 2 pastors in the city of Philadelphia, well known, just recently arrested not just, it's not necessarily human trafficking, but they were doing a lot of images and sharing all of that.
Mm,
These are trusted people.
Yeah.
sure.
So until we are ready to have conversations in our churches, our temples, our mosques, and all the places that we trust people, that's that what Laura said about that not feeling right. Somebody in power saying something to you and you're not feeling right. You have to have places where you can talk about it. And the other important component is schools and the conversations they're having. So I know there's an organization called Access Matters who goes and works with the school district in giving information to children. They're actually got a human trafficking component built into that conversation as well. So as John said at the onset, this is a difficult, sensitive topic, and we all have to get the language to know how to talk about it. And that's, I think, all of us on this call are very much engaged in doing that.
The stereotype is the van that runs by, scoops you up and goes, but that's a movie. That's what happens in Hollywood. It's not really what happens in reality. In reality, we're talking about people who know their abuser, people who are in their circle. So how do we have these conversations in a way that gives them the seriousness that it deserves without sensationalizing it?
I can jump in here just to say
Please.
that thank you. PennDOT recently, this year, actually relaunched our human trafficking training to address those exact topics. So we took a hard look at our training and made sure that it was victim-centered, trauma-informed, and doesn't sensationalize the topic. So we avoided picturing any type of photo of what a victim may look like because that gets very difficult. As we already discussed, a victim can be any single person. So if we show a particular gender, race, age, that might make our employees think that that's what a trafficking victim looks like. Additionally, we took away any type of references to prostitution and any imagery of chains, tape on the mouth, any sensationalized
Hmm.
imagery that would remind you of a Gone Girl or a movie, because in reality,
Gotcha.
like you said, a lot of people know they're traffickers. A lot of people don't even know they are victims of a crime. So that is why we try to really just focus on factual information and what to look for and how to do something about it.
Yeah, I
Um,
found some of the material like when Tech came to our annual conference recently, they gave a little presentation talking about the different kinds of victims, and I found that work very interesting as well. Just the way that was like centering the individual stories and the woman's story was just very compelling. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. It was a very compelling piece of video. Do you have anything you want to add on that, Laura?
I was just gonna say, just kind of picking up on a thread. So I know we've all probably seen like this hand
Yes.
yeah.
signal, right? Like help me. And I think we get asked this question all the time, like, oh, what about a national campaign towards this? And I think that that's great. I think the more awareness of these types of things, the more people that sort of have this on their mind is good. But Marisa made a really great point. Is so many people don't identify as victims. And so what about the people who are never going to do this, who are never going to self-identify or even really know or have language to understand that they are a victim of human trafficking? That's why we need everybody else in our communities, in these frontline, worker situations to be ready to recognize those red flags so they can intervene, so they can make that phone call and say, you know what? I'm seeing one, two, three red flags. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's not human trafficking. Maybe it's some other crime. We know that a lot of these different red flags can overlap with different
Yeah.
types of
Some
crime.
Venn diagrams happening
Yes,
for sure.
exactly. But, then it's not on that victim, it's not on that person that's being exploited to be screaming for help because that's not typically how they're going to present. It really is an awareness of all of us to understand we might be in that right place at the right time, and are we going to have the courage to pick up that phone or to intervene, to call law enforcement, right, in order to help.
We took, and my team and I took a training, one of the trainings before this campaign was even started. And this was with the police department here. And there was an example of somebody who was trafficked. I would never have thought this. So they were talking about shoplifting and how many a time somebody who's sent in to do shoplifting is usually a victim of human trafficking,
Sure.
but more than likely is also been addicted to drugs. That's the way of control that's happened. And they're sent into the store to say, you have to shoplift X number of things in order to get your next hit.
Mm.
Why would I ever have thought somebody got caught shoplifting would have such a insidious string attached to them beyond this, right? So this is why we have to sort of educate ourselves about the various ways this can show up, including the long-term grooming that has gone on where a person doesn't even think they're being trafficked. They're like, oh, this is on their own volition. And so it is said that it takes 7 attempts to have someone leave their trafficker, because it's much like the case of domestic abuse where you are connected to your
See that.
abuser.
Yeah.
And then other pieces to be ready when they are ready to move on. You have to have resources immediately to surround them and support them. And that's what we're working on as well in the city to make sure. And I'm extremely proud to say, for the first time ever, through the Salvation Army and through this money that has been deployed, we have 10 dedicated beds for transitional housing for those who have been trafficked, so they don't have to go through the homelessness services, which is a whole other process. You have to go to a shelter before you get placed. And these people have straight beds as soon as they're ready. And it's 10 now. Hopefully it'll be more, and hopefully we will not need more beds, right? But
Hopefully.
that's where we're getting there. But before that, I just am very pleased that we've been able to cut through red tape to give resources and services immediately.
And I just wanted to go back just briefly to say, Laura, we've also moved away from the hand signal just for the same reason, because if not everyone knows it, or if not everyone knows that they're in trouble. So yes, but to the transportation assets, yes. So we have both employees there that we can target as frontline eyes and ears, and also that is just their locations where many people pass through. It's easy to spot something that may seem out of place. So we want to train both our employees at our rest stops and welcome areas, but also to our put up signs and show different type of awareness messaging to target people who may be going in and out of those locations, like John said, convenience stores, rest stops, truck stops. So they're a great location for posters. Bathrooms are a great location for posters, just really good places for both personnel and members of the public to be on lookout for something that may not feel right.
I think when we think about convenience stores or truck stops or travel plazas, hotels, motels, right, all of these different places, the first thing is we have to remember traffickers are going to take their victims wherever they can to make money. Wherever there's an opportunity, or if they're en route to those opportunities, they're moving, they are counting on every single person, whether it's that convenience store worker, that truck driver, that transit operator, the stay-at-home mom, the grandma, whoever you are, they're counting on all of us to be ignorant of what this crime looks like, or to not care, or to be too afraid to get involved. And so that's why when you think about the millions of people, all of us, no matter who you are, we need to know about this. But those convenience store workers, right? How many people are they interacting with on a daily basis? You have to kind of be a people person to be in that type of a role. And so you can pick up on when something isn't right. We had this case of Jessica Chapman. She was a Sapp Brothers employee, and she was working behind the counter. She had this woman that she noticed there were just some odd things as she was moving in and out of the convenience store. And she came to the counter and was trying to pay for some items, and just something wasn't right. And so Jessica just like quickly took the rewards application for the store and just started asking some questions like, are you okay? Who are you? What's going on? And that woman was able to give enough information. Unfortunately, she was then sort of escorted out of the store by her exploiter. But Jessica got enough information, got a license plate, got right all these red flags that are going through her mind, this filter of what do I need to report, was able to turn that over to law enforcement, and they were able to help remove that woman from the person who was exploiting her. And so I think none of us expect to be heroes. Nobody expects to be like the guy or the girl, right? That ends up being the hero in that moment. But that's why it's so important for everybody to have this type of awareness, because again, when you think just the trucking industry alone, over 3.5 plus 3.6 million CDL holders out there across the
Oh,
roads
yeah.
at any given time, more of them than law enforcement out on our roadways. They are trained to read all of these signs as they're moving in our cities and our highways. So why wouldn't we train them to recognize the signs of human trafficking? And what an amazing mobile army they've proven to be. And the same is true for all of these frontline workers in these industries.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, a lot of these signs might be obvious to the initiated, but to the lay person, they may not know what those signs are. Like you were saying, not everybody knows what the sign is. They may not want to stare at it. They might be concerned that they don't want to say the right thing or get somebody into trouble. What are those signs? What are those yellow and red flags people should be looking for?
Yeah, I can just jump in first since I was going, but please, ladies, join me. I think
Conversation.
the
Yeah.
two most obvious signs are anytime you see a minor that you believe is involved in commercial sex, right? Automatically a victim of human trafficking. A minor cannot consent to sex, so certainly they cannot
Yeah.
sell sex. Or anytime you believe you're witnessing somebody under the control of a pimp or that
Mhm.
trafficker, right? Regardless of the age or gender of that potential victim or that potential trafficker. We know that traffickers can be anyone, just like victims can be anyone. And so anytime you see those red flags, start to take that second look. Obviously, if you think there's a minor, if you think that there is an active crime that's taking place, call 911 immediately. But some of those other red flags could be, and again, the Venn diagram sort of situation. Do you see signs of malnutrition? Do you see signs of control, bruising, wounds on a person? Do they look disheveled? Do they look malnourished? Do they look like they are under the control of someone else, or are they not allowed to speak for themselves? Oftentimes,
Yep.
traffickers will, just assume the conversation and they will speak for the victim, or they will be very much attentive to the victim as they're listening to the victim talk, making sure that they're saying the correct thing.
Mhm.
Do they have their own identification documents? Are they in control of their own passport, their own
Mm.
ticket if they're on some type of
Mhm.
transportation system? Do they have their own money? Do they mention having to make a quota? Like there's so many red flags that somebody in these frontline um, fields may see.
Yeah.
That's
Laura, you
interesting.
hit them all, except I was just going to
Yeah.
mention maybe inappropriate attire for the weather. It's another
That's
thing.
what I,
I was going to
that's
ask
what I
about
was.
that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Yep.
my one addition.
Yep.
Great minds think alike, yes. And just
Yeah.
wanted to quickly bounce back to what Laura said about the license plate. That's what we train our employees to do, get some identifying information, whether it's what the people look like, their hair color, their attire, their height, gender, car, vehicle, color, make, model, license plate, whatever you can get, the time of day, the exact location. The more details to make an actionable tip, the more luck law enforcement will have investigating, and that we can be some kind of intervention point. And again, call 911 in an
Yeah.
emergency and never ever approach the situation, never alert the potential victim that you are aware of what may be going on, and never ever ever approach the trafficker.
A question, and this might sound like a silly question, but will if someone put in a report and say they were wrong, they didn't know the situation wasn't bad, is someone going to get in trouble, or is there going to create a problem if someone puts in a false, not a false report, but an incorrect information? How does that work exactly?
From what I've been told, and I've talked to law enforcement about it, they're able to assess very quickly whether this was just somebody being, overly concerned about something. If they're able to find both the trafficked person and the trafficker together. If they get the person separately by themselves, that's of course a different conversation. But they're very quickly able to ascertain, I'm told. However, I do think we need a lot more training of our law enforcement, especially our beat cop on the street, to be able to spot, identify, and do this. And that's part of why we have been put so much energy into our training, because my sort of issue that I have in this whole scenario is a lot of times the police will go after the trafficked person because they're termed a prostitute, right? However, they are not so much going after the person, the John, so-called John, or the person who is doing the trafficking, the trafficker, right? So those are the places that I would really put a lot more energy if you were, because you can hold that up. That's how people know about things, right? So I told you about the two pastors. I know about that. So if you
Yeah.
had arrests of these traffickers and people started thinking, this is not a lucrative business for me to be in because I could land up, because the Philadelphia police are ready, up, and alert about this, right? I better not consume this so-called product, right? Because I am going to get targeted. That's what we have to do. We have to do both sides of it. We have to get people ready not to become targets of trafficking, but at the same time, we have to really hit them where it is because it's a business.
Yeah.
This is a multi-billion-dollar global business. And one of the places where we can do a lot of work is the financial sector of tracking these. That's a whole other conversation, but that's my next target for next budget season is to see how do we engage with the JP Morgans and the other, you know, banks in the space who know how to spot if they're trained and they know how to spot and track, and then you have real evidence of money flowing. That's where we need to also go in concert with doing all these other things.
No, that makes sense. So, Councilmember, I have a question for you. So, as Philly prepares for major events like the World Cup, what does prevention look like at the local level?
Prevention looks like trained people being able to spot and reporting this. As was mentioned, do not address the trafficker, do not go engage with them. Call the Salvation Army's New Day Stop, the trafficking hotline. If you're outside, you can call the National Human Trafficking Hotline. We also have a local Covenant House emergency shelter. It's not just for trafficking victims, but it can be for anybody who needs transitional housing. It's for between ages of 18 and 24 and LGBTQ friendly because that's another target population. So we have multiple modes, but of information. And of course, 911 if it's an immediate issue and you're seeing something. But if we have an awareness of this going on, there's going to be a much more mobilization of resources for those who do call in and who are able to pinpoint where this is happening.
Kind of tying it into that last question, our law enforcement partners, our partners at the National Hotline, I think everybody says the same thing. They would rather people call and be wrong than not call and have that, exploited person continue to endure whatever it is that they're
Sure.
being forced to do. And so, I think, yeah, we keep hitting the nail on the head, which is there's always more education, there's always more awareness, there's always more nuance. I've been doing this work at TAT for 13 years.
Wow.
I did a Master's of International Human Rights with a concentration in forced labor and human trafficking. And I tell you, I'm a lifelong learner, but I'm still learning. There's so much. There are so many layers to this onion. There are so many, unfortunately, horror stories that you continue to
Yeah.
hear. You continue to hear just how manipulative, how just insane some of these situations are, and so nothing surprises me anymore, unfortunately. And I think, yes, continuing to educate law enforcement, continuing from that local level to get everybody involved, from the law enforcement to the transit operators to our city government to our hospitals, right? We could do a whole nother discussion on that about how many victims experience the healthcare system during their time of
Yes. Yeah.
exploitation and come into contact with dentists and nurses and ERs and all of these different people. So, I mean, there really is not one sector that is immune from this. Like it's touching potentially all of us. And yeah, we just need to do more. We just all need to do more.
I was asked by an organization that treats young children, who encounter, children who've been abused in some way, about getting more training of their therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists around human trafficking because they could see this, but they might not be able to identify exactly what the setting was for this, right? So that's why this training was the first thing we really invested in, and we have to make it wider, like you said. All of these spaces, hospital personnel is a perfect example, and they're willing, this is like do no harm for their patients. So I think that we have ready audiences, but it's just a topic that's not talked about. Like the fact that, we are having this conversation is very interesting to me, how there's been an uptick in more awareness, which means the more you do it, it'll feed on itself and it'll grow. So thank you for doing this because we're reaching a completely different audience when we're doing this.
No, I think it's an important conversation to have. I mean, a lot of our members, like I've said a few times, I mean, like they're on the front lines. They're the cash registers. They're people at the C stores. They're seeing this stuff day in and day out. So What makes training so important in these situations, and what can we do to improve the existing training that we're doing?
Nobody expects to be a hero. And so, and our heroes are these case studies that we have, they would never raise their hand and say, "Oh yeah, I did something heroic." They're just being a human. They're just doing the right thing. They've recognized they're in the right place. And so I think the industry specific aspect of, especially what TAT has, but of all of these different organizations that we're seeing now provide to the law enforcement, which TAT does as well, or to our healthcare workers, or to, I was talking to somebody a couple of years ago that was really interested in developing something for tattoo artists because they have an opportunity to see victims or to
Hmm.
potentially see some of the branding tattoos as they're
Mhm.
tattooing their clients. Do they recognize some red flags of different tattoos that might be from a branding perspective that traffickers give to their victims to sort of mark ownership? So the industry specific aspect of it is very important. I think the more niche it can get, the more specific cases we can have for those cashiers or for those healthcare workers or for those law enforcement or truck drivers, whoever. That's what makes it real. And then, of course, hearing those success stories. That is something that TAT, is very important to us. We want to celebrate the stories and the cases that we know are happening. We want to hear from drivers. We want to hear from truck stop employees and people in the energy sector, bus drivers. We want to hear, what are you seeing? What have you encountered? So that that can be an encouragement and sort of just a reinforcement for others in those same industries to say, yeah, that's right. This, I may encounter this as a part of my everyday job. I hope I don't, but if I do, am I going to be equipped? Am I going to remember those red flags? Am I going to know that call to action, which is to call law enforcement, to call the national hotline or a local hotline or whatever that protocol may be? TAT trained school bus drivers. What red
Hmm.
flags can they be seeing in the kids that are riding their buses every day? There's a specific protocol for school bus drivers and how they need to be reporting from like a mandated reporter standpoint. But we all have to know our place and we all have to know those intersections. And I think the more we can make it real for each individual, the easier it will be to understand this could be me in this situation.
And just to add on to that, there was just a recent press release from Uber on training their drivers and having their platform provide information and the tracking, GPS tracking, and all of that. So you were looking at transportation in different modes, right? Including the one you'll see inside the city, particularly in these times. And they're actually collaborating with another global organization to bring awareness during World Cup across not just here, but everywhere, right? So this is what, I mean, Laura says that the more people we get involved in participating in this, the more the impact will be about not just the awareness, but then the prevention of it. And the dinner table conversations with your family is where it needs to also happen, right? And so if you're taking an Uber ride and you have a young teenager who is doing it, that's a awareness thing that needs to happen. And if Uber has some signs right in their car, that could be a moment of conversation when the kid comes home, right? I saw this on this, or there was a handout they got. We're really trying to encourage more material to be out there for people to get.
There might be managers and training managers, HR professionals that are watching this right now. What is like a practical, like, go do these steps right now to enhance the training that you're currently doing or to get them on the right track to get the information they need to do that? What would be some of those like practical first steps?
I would encourage your members to check out www.pa.gov/human trafficking. That is the state's trusted, vetted clearinghouse of trainings, public awareness information, a directory of service providers. So it could be geared toward a potential victim, it could be geared toward a layperson, or even specific industries like your membership today. So please check out that website.
I would say also please contact TAT if you're not already utilizing our free training. Again, we've got lanes for OTR drivers, for local drivers, for in-home delivery and professional movers and what those people going in and out of homes might see. We've got the transit bus, the motor coach, the school bus drivers. We've got training specific to the energy industry. So really, no matter what sort of frontline or transportation adjacent field you're in, we've got training that can be easily included as a part of new hire orientation or regular training. Again, there's no cost. It's 30 minutes or less. We also have a corporate training. So if you are like one of us, right, that sits behind a desk or in an office every day, but you're a part of one of these types of organizations, what can you be looking out for? That's a new training we released last year on just what we can all see as we're operating in our communities, going to restaurants, going to different businesses, traveling for work or traveling, with our families. When you're checking in and out of hotels, what kind of red flags do you need to be looking out for? So we just have a ton of resources as well that we would love to share, including complimentary materials that we can send, again, at no cost.
And
That's amazing. We'll definitely include the links. Yeah, please.
I'll just add to this. You can go to my Instagram bio, and there's a link for Prevent Human Trafficking in Philadelphia. It's a sort of a little course, and these were developed in this campaign in keeping in mind that there might be specific situations related to trafficking locally, such as how to support a young person in the child welfare system or who is at risk for being trafficked. But we already have the module for city employees, and now they have a module for employees outside the city as well, meaning outside city government as well. So, you just heard a whole slew of resources coming from different, agencies and organizations. The more we advertise it, whichever one people feel comfortable with, they should take it however easy it is to access.
The people that are not going to, they're not going to maybe go through all the training. They might just be a person that would be at a C-store or at a gas station. What does a good report look like? If you were to walk away with some tips for someone who might just be scribbling down some notes to give to a cop later that may not go through a training, what does a good report look like?
Again, those details. Marisa mentioned some of those things, right? Like make and model of a vehicle, description of the potential trafficker, the potential victim, as many details as you can get. Obviously, specific locations.
License plate.
Yeah, license plate, right? Or if you're in a neighborhood, the address of a specific home. If you're a local operator, local delivery person, whoever you may be, just those specific details are so important. And I would encourage people to write down, because I've been the first on the scene of traffic accidents and all kinds of weird stuff, that I've called in over my lifetime. And I think, there is sometimes that sense of fear of like, am I gonna freeze up? Am I gonna be able to communicate, the things that are causing me to feel this way? Write those things down. Jot down what it is that made you feel like something wasn't right. Because
Yeah.
again, A, you don't have to be right, and B, it might not be trafficking, but it could be some other type of crime, and that's just as
Yeah.
important. I think that's the other thing that we're finding with folks taking our training, and I'm sure similar with you all. It is so important and it's so great. It's my number one goal, train people on human trafficking. But what we're finding is when you start to just live in this space of awareness, you start to notice a
Mhm.
lot of stuff. And you could be reporting on child abuse or some type
Mhm.
of physical abuse or something else. And that's just as important for us to lean into and to report on. And again, to overcome that fear of it's okay for me to be wrong in this situation because what if I'm right?
Well, as we close, if a listener wanted to do one or two things after this episode, whether they run a store, manage drivers, work in transportation, or just care about the community, what should they do next?
I would make sure you have, just as a matter of rule, the phone numbers for where you can report the crimes. Just put it into your phone. Like I have in my phone about reporting not only this, but also, when I see people, unhoused people having some crisis, I have a number. I just keep it ready. So keep some hotline numbers ready, as well as get trained. Like all of us have training resources we just described. Just go on a, Sunday afternoon, and even if you're not in any of these industries that we're from or talking about, just get yourself trained and your eyes will open up in a different way. And it is just getting online and it's all free. You just click on a link and you watch it, right? So I would highly recommend everybody get trained.
I would encourage you to, especially if you're in one of these industries, download the free TAT app, search Truckers Against Trafficking on any app platform. You don't have to be a trucker in the trucking industry for this app to be relevant to you, but there, again, is tailored red flag content, access to case studies, access to our training, a whole bevy of hotline numbers that are geolocated. No matter where you are in the country, it'll pull up sort of one of the best numbers for you to call. There's a whole service provider directory associated there, so you can look up different service providers no matter where you are as well. So that would be one thing. And I think, yeah, just to kind of we keep riffing off each other, but the more you look, the more you find. The more you start to educate yourself, the more you're going to start thinking about this. The more things you're going to see, the more headlines you're going to start to just connect the dots about. And I think that is so important. You don't have to be super passionate about anti-trafficking to make a huge difference. I hope everybody kind of gets it in their blood and really wants to do something. But if this doesn't become your thing, that's okay. Just start with that basic level awareness and know. And again, I think just to reinforce it, it's okay to be wrong. And man, what if it was your call that helped to recover somebody? Just what an amazing difference you would make in somebody's life just by having the courage to do that.
And on the topic of hotlines, I just want to share that PennDOT and a lot of agencies in the Commonwealth are promoting the Pennsylvania State Police tip line. If you'd like to report something to law enforcement within Pennsylvania, that number is 888-292-1919. Again, 888-292-1919. Or you can send an email to tips@pa.gov. And whether you call or email, well, I guess email not so much, but if you call, you can make it anonymous if that's a concern.
Okay, wow. Well, this is a really important conversation. Big thank you to Philadelphia City Councilmember Dr. Nina Ahmad, Marisa Balanda from PennDOT, and Laura Cyrus from TAT for joining us and sharing their insights on human trafficking, awareness, prevention, training, and the role frontline industries can play in protecting vulnerable people. Thank you for tuning into Shelf Confidence. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to smash the subscribe button, share, leave us a review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening. Until next time, I'm John Zimmerman, and this is Shelf Confidence.